Hey, my name is Inhuman and welcome to this full guide on using Blender to create Apex Legends related content. So what will I be teaching you? So first we're going to install all the required programs like Blender and its plugins and the shader. Then of course you'll need Apex Legends and Legion. I'll explain what Legion is later on. Then we'll take a look at the extraction process for the models and how to import the models into Blender, and also how to apply the different materials. Then I'll explain how to pose and animate the characters, and how to set up your scene in Blender. And the last thing I'll show you are just general tips and tricks that you should know. You can use this knowledge for making animations, thumbnails, reference images for fan art, or really anything you want to make with the models. I recommend you watch every part of this video if you're new to Blender, but if you already know certain things, I will leave timestamps in the description so you can skip the parts that you don't need. If you've got any questions that I won't answer in this video, then just go to the Discord server in the description. There's a bunch of helpful people that really know their stuff and they're always willing to help out. Also, one last thing before we start, I will probably remake this video once I get a better microphone. So if you're watching this in the future, there's a possibility I have left a link in the description, and you can just follow that link to get to the more recent version of the video. So with the introduction out of the way, let's start installing our programs. You'll find the download links to these in the description. So the first program we'll need is Blender. Okay, so to download Blender you just go to download Blender 2.82a, and then it will automatically download it, and you install it like any other program, just follow the guides there. For Blender we will also need two plugins, the SEModel and the SEAnim plugin. Download it as a zip file. Same with the animations. And you will also need to download a shader. You will also need Legion, an asset ripping tool. Just go to download Legion 2.13 and it will send you to Mega. And here you just download it. Now if you have Blender installed, you have to set it up properly and install all the add-ons. So we'll just remove all of this here and go to Edit, Preferences, and then in your add-ons here, go to Install. Now go to your downloads directory or wherever you downloaded it, and then import these two. Just simply click on them and install add-on. I've already installed them, so I don't need to. Then you can search for them, SE, and you'll see import export, SEAnim and SEModel, and they're both checked here. And now you can also go to File and Import, and if you want to, you can create quick favorites for this little menu. When you press Q inside of the viewport, it will show up like this, and you can quickly import SE models and SEAnims. It's not necessary, but it's really recommended. If you want to, you can also move Legion into your Apex directory. I've done this because it's easier for me to find the files inside this folder here, but you can place it wherever you like. And then you can just open it, and after reading the end user license agreement, you can just load a file. You go into your Apex directory. I have Apex on my second hard drive where I keep all my game files. So in your directory you just go to Packs, Win64, and here you can load the file that is called common.rpack. And once all your assets are loaded, you will see all the materials here, and the models and the animations. And the thing you can do before you import it is go here, and if you don't need the images, every single image, but just the materials and the models, you can deselect that here and then again load the file so you don't export as many files. In these settings you can also check here if you want to use another export format if you know what you're doing. But for Apex Legends I really recommend using SE models and SE animation files. And for images, I would personally recommend you use PNG images, but if you prefer the other ones you can also use these. If everything in your settings looks fine, you can just go to Export All Or if you only want to export a selected, for example, let's take Wraith, search, and then you can only export Wraith. But if you want everything, you can just click export all. And this is going to take quite some time, probably depending on your hard drive speed from 5 minutes to 45 minutes, so you'll have to be patient. And once it's done, you have all the files. Now for sound, you will need to load a different file, and this one is also in the Apex directory, but under audio, ship, and general.mbnk. And here you will also have all the different sound effects. You can export all, and they will go into the exported_files directory. Okay, so the way that Legion stored these files is in different folders. You have one for animations, you have one for images if you selected it, you have one for materials, you have one for models, and for sounds. VPK, models, cars, and animations cars, these are just folders that I created. You won't have these unless you also extracted VPKs in the past, but like I said, you probably won't have or need these. So animations, for every model in the game you will have one folder, and in that folder there are all the animations that are for this specific model. For example, Octane's jump pad has some animations. Images are stored in one big folder. They're all here, and you can see this if we go medium icons, for example. They don't have names, so you can't search for a specific one, which is pretty bad, but that's just how the textures are stored. You can see here we have the skyboxes, and here we have the maps and the UI, and you can sort by size if you want to get the biggest files, like the maps. You can use a PowerShell script if you want to search for images with a specific aspect ratio. For example, if you want to search for images that are only that are not 1:1, like most textures are 1:1, like all of these here. And if you just want to search for images like this one here, here it is with all the banners that are used for promotions and stuff, you can do that. But I won't show it in this video. You can search for it online. Okay, so materials are stored. For each material there is a folder, and there's quite a lot of materials, as you can see here on the right. There's really lots of different materials. Just goes to show you how much effort is really put into these games. And if you open one up, you can see there are multiple textures that all have roughly the same shapes, but they're completely different textures used for completely different things, and I will explain to you real quick. So we have the albedo texture. This is probably the one. Albedo or diffuse textures are the default color of the material. Then we have specular. This is specular here, and the way specular works is just showing you the reflections on reflective surfaces. For example, with gold you have everything that is golden stored on that texture, so it's shiny. Then normal, these are the ones that stand out the most and you can find them the easiest. They are there to simulate fake depth, so you don't have to add any vertices, you can just make depth using a texture. Ambient occlusion is this one here. It's pretty hard to describe these, but these create like fake shadows. I don't know how to explain it, but it casts shadows. And cavity is similar, but with thinner lines and smaller scales. Then there are emission textures, like for Wraith we have this one, for example, where you can see on the left side there's this little thing, and emission is basically whenever a surface is shining light onto other objects. Then there are textures like subsurface. These are for, it's kind of hard to describe subsurface, but just imagine holding your thumb against the sun and you kind of see this red at the edges. This is what subsurface simulates on materials. And then there are these textures. I call them transparency maps. I don't know what they're called officially, probably transparency maps as well. But these are there for showing what is transparent and what is not. These are only there for some textures. I don't know what decides if it has a transparent texture or not. Some textures just have alpha values for transparency, but some don't. And yeah, I'll show you later how to use them. Models are stored similar to animations, but images are stored in the folders as well, so you have the images here. However, I don't recommend using these images because recolors aren't here in the folder. For example, if you have a skin, you won't find that in here, and it can be pretty hard to find some materials because they're stored with the name of the model and not with the name of the materials. You'll see later what I mean. Sounds are probably the easiest thing to find. They're all saved in one big list and you can just go and search for anything really. If you want to search for music, for example, you just have to search for R5, but you also have pretty much any sound you can find and also stuff that isn't in the game yet. Okay, now that the extraction process is over, you just need to import the models into Blender. So to do this, you either press Q if you selected your quick favorites earlier, or you go to File, Import and SEModel, which should be here. And then you go to your Apex directory. And after you went there, you just add the directory to your favorites here with this little button. And like this you can find the folder easier for later projects. It's really useful. Now you can choose any model you like, but I'm just gonna choose Wraith because she's the best to kind of show everything. So it's pilot_light_Wraith. And the way you move around in the viewport is with the middle mouse button. You just hold it down and you rotate your mouse. And to move sideways, you need to hold down Shift. So you move like this. It will be weird at first if you're new to Blender, but trust me, you'll get used to it. You can also zoom in using the scroll wheel, but you shouldn't use this just to get near to an object. Just use it to zoom. It can be weird only moving sideways, but trust me, you'll get used to it. Okay, so looking at Wraith's model, you'll notice she doesn't have any color, and to change that, we're going to change the viewport shading. Viewport shading is just how things appear in your viewport, and if you set it to wireframe, it will only show vertices and the connection between them. Then we have solid mode, which is the default mode, and here it just shows you everything in black and white. The third one is material preview, where it shows you a preview of the material, but it isn't shaded yet, so there isn't any light. And the fourth one is just with the lighting, but I would recommend using this if you're editing stuff and textures. Okay, these are called bones, and they're important for animation. For now, let's make them invisible though, because we don't need them right now. Next to this skeleton here, you'll have this little arrow, and if you press on it, it will also show all the meshes. So you have different meshes for each character, like hands for example, the body, the cape and the jetpack here. And these are all the different parts that use different materials. And something that is really important for when you do animation is you should never move the mesh itself like this. You should never do that. Instead, move the parent object like this. So when you do animation, I can show you real quick. You don't have to do any of this right now. I'm just going to show you. So if you, for example, move all the meshes at the same time here to move the character, instead of moving the bones, you will notice it will detach, and if you switch to pose mode, you will see if we try to move the arm, it goes all over the place and it's really not ideal. You should never move the meshes themselves, always move the skeleton. And if you look at Wraith's face, you'll notice her eyes, for example, look really weird because there's no transparency, and the cape as well, and her hair looks brown even though it's black in the game. And we can fix that. by applying all the different textures. For example, with her body, let's go to the shading tab, and here you'll see you have wraith_body as the material right here. And this is important because you have to go here to your folder and into the materials folder. Now you search for the text that is right here in the middle, wraith_body. You can also make the symbols a bit bigger, and here you have all the different textures. But before we apply all of these textures, we will have to import the shader first. You just need to go to File, Append, and then go to your downloads, and then you open the apex_shader file or apex shader file, and in that file you will see objects and cube, and you can now look at this cube here, select it, and you'll notice this here. This is the node for the shader, so you just right click and copy it, and then you click on her body. You delete this shader. This default shader from Blender is not really good for Apex, and right click and paste. Then you connect them like this, and you notice it really looks a bit better, but it still looks weird, like the reflections look really weird. And that's because not all of the textures are applied yet. So this is the diffuse or albedo texture. This one's already applied, and it was taken from the model folder. And this one here is metallic or specular, and you already notice some of the metal looks a bit better. Then here we have cavity, the smaller scale ambient occlusion, and of course ambient occlusion as well. This one is roughness, this one's always black and white, and this one's normal. With the normal maps you have to be careful because these always have to be set to non-color if they are yellow. If they're already blue, you don't have to change it, but most of the normals in Apex Legends are yellow, so you have to change it to a non-color in the color space here. And here we have emission. You have to connect it to both the emission and the emission color. And look at that, it looks a lot better. Here you actually see the emission, this little blue thing. If we change to no light, then you can actually see it glows a little bit, and I'll show you later how to make it glow even better and brighter. Okay, here we have our first example of a subsurface texture. Here you can see it on the left. This is, I probably cut that out and put it before. And yeah, this is what subsurface textures look like. They're usually red. And yeah, you connect them here into subsurface color and subsurface. So the transparent parts are the hardest, I'd say, because you have to add a bunch of nodes in addition. So we'll again paste the shader, connect it, but this time we'll also add transparent, BSDF, not translucent, transparent, and mix shader. And then you connect them like this, and you take the alpha value from here, and then you'll have to change in the material settings, blend mode, alpha clip, and there you have it. Now the object is transparent. However, with some textures, like I said, they have a specific texture just for the transparency. And here you'll have to again paste the shader, connect it, search for the material, wraith_hair, and there you have this texture. You again add transparent and mix shader. You connect them similarly, but this time the factor, you set this to non-color, and connect it into the shift factor. And again set it to alpha clip. And there you have it. And I will also show now for every other part, but if you want to skip that because you understood it, or you can do it on your own, then you can just go to the timestamp in the description. But for those who need it, I'll just make it. Okay, and if you did everything right, your model should look something like this. With the transparency right here. Emission. And of course your reflectiveness. Okay, now for posing and animating. You have to make this visible again. Just click on the eye on the right, and now you can press Q and click on SEAnim, or you go to File, Import, and SEAnimation here. And then you go to your animations folder and search for Wraith or whatever you chose earlier. And you just import any asset that you want, any animation. I'm just gonna take Lobby Center Idle, and it's gonna take some time to load. And there it is. What we have done here are the keyframes. I will explain what these are later when we make our own animation. And you can see this one is 369 frames long. Very nice. If we want to edit something else other than the individual bones, then we have to exit pose mode and go to object mode again. So whenever you can't select an object, you're probably stuck in pose mode. You can't select her right now, only the bones. And if we enter object mode again, you can select everything. Okay, so and if you want to preview an animation, you see here I have 6 frames per second right now, so you don't want to do it in material preview mode. Just select viewport shading here, solid mode, and you can see I'm getting 30 frames per second, which is fine. It's not really good, but it's enough to like preview an animation. And now you can also make the bone invisible. And yeah, this is how you import an animation. Now if you want to make custom poses, you have to go into, first have to click on it, then select pose mode, and I'm gonna delete the animation that we already have, so that now everything is clear. So first you have to select bone. Let's just say we take this one, and for the first frame you press R to rotate it, and you move your mouse. So this is now rotated. And we can also rotate it a little like this. Okay, and this is now our first frame. So we have to make a keyframe for this. And the way we can create these keyframes is by selecting everything, pressing I, and going to whole character. And now we can go to our next frame. You should animate stuff in the animation part here, just because if you select the bone, it shows you all the keyframes here. And you can also click on this one here to show all the frames at all time, to show all the bones at all time. So if you, for example, select this one here, you can see, okay, we just have to scroll down, and here it is. Scarf jiggle long, so this is here for the scarf. And if we rotate this, you can see her scarf is moving. And now if we want to go to another part and create a keyframe here and kind of move this arm forward, and I'm really just making something basic, and then we can create another keyframe for the whole character, and now it's moving. And a couple of tips I can give you later on how to make this smoother and stuff, but for now this is fine. Something else you can do, and that I use regularly, is using this little button here, where you can automatically create keyframes whenever you edit something. For example, nope, you want to move that. If you select frame number 90 here on the dope sheet and you move this, it will automatically create a keyframe for this bone only, which is pretty neat. And yeah, that's the basics of animating. Of course, there's a lot of other techniques that you can learn, and these are just the basics that I'm gonna teach you here. Okay, our next point is setting up a scene. So whenever you create a new project in Blender, you have to make some adjustments to the way you render the final product that you make here on the side. So something that I always enable is bloom. So if you look at these lights here, they should be shining, but they aren't. And if we enable bloom, you can see like a little bit, it's not noticeable with these little lights, but if we turn it on and off, you can kind of see bloom just makes it a little more bright around the surface, and you should always enable this, I think. Then ambient occlusion as well, it's just enables ambient occlusion. I don't really see that much of a difference, but it's there, and why not? Then you should always add light. You just go to add, then light and sun, and here you can see the light properties. In this little window, you can change the color of the light, which I normally don't do, but you can if you want to. You can make a red sun. Then the strength, I recommend using strength 5 and turning the angle up to 50. This will make it look weird when you're looking around like this, but once it's calibrated and stuff and captured enough of the image, it should look fine. And then you can enable or disable shadows. So if you don't want shadows, that's fine, you can disable that. And if you want the sun to be shining from a specific angle, you can also move this. Just move this point, and then it comes from the front, for example. And I'm just going to make the skeleton invisible again. And it looks like this, so this is pretty neat. And then you have like no light from behind. Another thing you should always do is change the frame rate of your project. So if you want a high quality frame rate, if you want a high frame rate, you want to go for 60. And then you should, in the animation tab, just select it, select everything by pressing A. You have to be with your mouse here, down here in the drop sheet, while pressing A. And then press S and 2 to match the frame rate with the changes you did. So it scales the frames to be from 30 to 60, that's times 2, and that's why you press S2. Then another thing you should change when you want to render your final video is go here and change where your project exports. Normally it's just your temp folder, and I'm just gonna choose Blender here. This is my default directory where I always store my projects. The file format is also important. If you just want to save it as an image sequence, you can choose PNG, then it stores every single frame as an image. But if you want to make a video, then you can select FFmpeg video, set it to MPEG 4 here, and keep it at H.264 here. Do not select MPEG 4 here, it looks like crap if you do. And now if you render this, you will get a video. Another thing important for Blender is to know where it should render it from. So you have to add a camera. Just go here and add camera. And you can move that camera to your current position by going to View, Align Active Camera to View. And yeah, this is pretty much the basic setup. You can now go to Render and Render Animation or Render Image to export your video. Okay, the last thing I still want to show you is just some general tips and tricks on making your renders look better and stuff like that. So the first thing I want to show you is making your background transparent. So you just go here in here and right here, and you go to film and transparent. So it renders the background transparent when you make a PNG image, or with some video formats you can also, I think it was QuickTime, and then you have to use QTRL or QTRL. I don't know exactly how you say it. And you can also make transparent videos with that, but they're gonna be a lot bigger. So I wouldn't recommend that for videos, just for images. If you want to make a PNG image, if you want to make a video, just use these settings here, and just the quality, if you want it better, you can just go high quality. Next thing is interpolation, I think is what it's called. And basically when you have an animation for your character, you can change the way, because it kind of makes the animation blend. Like it starts off slow, then it's fast, and it ends slow again. And the way you could change this is going to key, interpolation mode, and then linear. So it's always moving at the same speed, and then it stops abruptly, so it's not smooth. Then if you want to have a green screen, you have to go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and then search for Images, and import images as planes is the one you need. And then you can just go to File, Import Images as Planes, and then you can import a green screen and put it in the background. And yeah, that's basically it. Thank you for watching.